All right. Good morning, everybody. I am back on today. I missed yesterday for a few different reasons, but I am back at it today. So something I did want to talk about. I'm just waiting for the Instagram thing to load up. One thing I wanted to ask you guys is if there is a topic that you'd like me to cover or something you'd like me to talk about, send me a message. I'd really like to do. I would really like to be doing Q&As on Friday. So that's where I'll be answering all of your guys' questions. So if you do have a question or something, or if there's a topic you'd like me to cover, send me a message. You can actually send it to this email here, and then I'll make sure that I get it, and I'll cover that topic on Fridays. So I'd really like to be doing that, doing some Q&A on Fridays. Over the last few videos, we kind of covered this idea of taking aim, sort of giving yourself a direction to move in. And in order to do that, we came up with 10 goal setting sort of tools that you can use to help establish what your aim should be. Then we established your why, and we held that why up on 2 pillars of how and what. And all of that created sort of a foundation of being authentic. So authenticity. And now what we want to do is take that foundation and kind of backfill it by managing conversations. So conversations with ourselves or conversations with others. So once again, I've got my email up there. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover, just send me an email or send a comment under one of these videos, and I will address it. The other thing with comments, I can't see replies to comments. I can only see actual new comments. So if you are commenting, make sure you're putting in a new one and not putting it like under somebody else's comment or under one of my comments. That way I'll actually be able to see it. All right. So today we are going to be talking about conversations and having conversations with yourself. So in order to achieve all the things that I've talked about over the last few videos, we need to be able to manage some of the conversations we have with ourselves and with others. So these tools that I'm going to be going over, you can use them. They're great for yourself, having conversations with yourself, that sort of positive self-talk and how to develop that. But they're also really useful when it comes to having conversations with a significant other, maybe somebody at work or friends, family members, this kind of stuff. So it can be quite useful. And in order to start this conversation with yourself, before you have this kind of discussion of accountability, you want to ask yourself, what's the conversation that you should be holding? What sort of conversation should you actually be having? And whether or not you should actually have it. When these conversations come up, it's typically because there's some sort of violation that's occurred. So you didn't meet some sort of expectation. And in response, you want to be able to change that behavior. And it's important to understand that if these violations keep popping up, there's probably going to be a deeper issue at hand. The first thing to look at would be the content of the conversation. So if an infraction occurs, ask yourself, is this the first time that this has happened? So for example, you've got your health and fitness goal that you're moving towards. You've got your nutrition plan and your workout system that you're working your way through, but you went out on the weekend, you had fun with your friends, but you didn't eat so well. If this is the first time that's happened, the problem is going to be likely there's an easy fix. However, if this is something that's been happening time and time again, what you've got is a pattern. So now we've created a pattern of behavior. That's going to be a little bit more problematic to solve. And then the last issue to discuss is going to be looking at whether or not it is a relationship problem. So that's something that happens in the fitness industry all the time. For example, maybe you have a negative relationship with food or exercise. And on that note, actually, if you're a trainer, a coach, or even a client, it might be a good idea, or it is a good idea. I'd strongly suggest that you don't use exercise as a way to enforce a penalty. People already have a very negative attitude towards exercise, and we don't need to be building that relationship. We want to have a positive relationship with exercise and a relationship with food, for that matter. So we want to discuss whether or not we've got a content pattern or relationship problem. Examples of that might be you don't like going to work, for example. I'm sure we've all heard a friend or maybe even yourself say, I really don't want to go to work today. If it's a content problem, this will be the first time that's occurred. Maybe you're working, maybe you're the cashier at a grocery store and you don't feel like you should be going to work today because of the health risks that are going on. The pattern would be that you don't feel like going to work every single day because of what's going on. And then a relationship problem would be perhaps it's the relationship with your employer, and that's why you don't want to be going to work this morning. Now, once you've decided kind of what category it falls under, we want to look at considering some other possibilities. So you want to explore the problem by looking at what came after. So what was the result of the violation and what kind of came before it. I do this a lot with my clients when it comes to nutrition, especially. I cheated on my diet, or I can't help but eat some food at the end of the day. We'll really explore looking into that and sort of what came before. I mean, obviously we know what the consequence was, but we really look at the kind of the psychology behind making that decision and how we can improve that. And one way of doing that is really asking yourself and looking at, what do you want for yourself? What do you want for others? And what do you want with the relationship that you have? And if you're able to establish that, try to distill it down to a single, concise sentence. The reason for that is once you have a simple, concise sentence, you're going to be able to find the appropriate response. If you can't do that, there's more than likely a chance that there's some sort of underlying issue going on there that you're not addressing, and then the problem will never actually get solved. So you have to decide if you're actually going to have this conversation with yourself or with somebody, first of all. Now, that can be challenging because if you do decide to speak up or you do decide to explore this conversation with yourself, you're opening up yourself to a whole new set of problems. You've got a whole bunch of new sort of attack vectors coming at you. However, if you remain silent, the problem may never get solved. Now, in deciding whether or not you should have that conversation, something you might want to ask yourself, is this something that you're actually acting out? Are you acting out your concerns? In psychology, they have something called anger displacement, where maybe you're just binge eating at the end of the day because you're unhappy with like your diet or something else that's happened in the day. There's maybe your conscience is constantly nagging at you. You've got that little voice inside your head that is just nagging you over and over and over again. Are you choosing the certainty of silence because you understand that being silent is a safe place to be over the risk of actually speaking up? Or are you telling yourself that you're helpless? That's something we hear a lot of as well. There's just nothing that I can do about that, or something like that. These kind of excuses. And what we're really doing is telling ourselves a bit of a story when we go through those four things. And what we really want to do, and this is a really powerful thing, is if you can try to master your story, you're going to find that you're able to yield really high quality results through these conversations. So one thing I like to do when I'm trying to figure out what the story is or what's going on is I ask myself, why would a reasonable, rational, decent human being do the thing that I didn't like? And that's something I ask myself all the time, especially with my own behavior, but more specifically when I get political updates from the States. I'm constantly asking myself, why would a reasonable, rational human being, decent human being, behave in that manner? And sometimes I can't find the answer for that, but it's worth asking yourself. And then the other thing you want to look at, I'm going to share my screen here in a minute, is this idea of there's basically 6 sources of influence that will cause you to create decisions or influence your decision, and it'll allow you to sort of dig a little bit deeper into the consequences of your actions or the actions of others. So I'm going to pop this up real quick. Hopefully you can read that. So 6 sources of influence. You want to look at whether it is a motivational influence or an ability, and then you can sort of subdivide those into a few different categories: personal, social, or structure. So when it comes to exercise and nutrition, you can simply ask yourself, is this something that you want to do, or is it something that you can do? For example, I can't work out today because the gym's closed and it's been closed for 8 weeks. Okay. Or I can't work out today because I don't feel like it. Sure. A social example might be, did I do it for the gram? Did I do it for social media? Or, people around me are going to make fun of me. Are people helping you, or are they a hindrance? Structural gets into reward systems. The carrots or the sticks. That's kind of an analogy of a horse. If you put the carrot in front of the horse's mouth, it's going to run faster. Or if you want your horse to run faster, you can take a stick and beat it, and it's going to run faster. Are the things around you providing a bridge or a barrier for achieving the things that you would like to achieve? So when you start to have these conversations with yourself, I'm just going to pop this down for a minute. The first thing you want to do is, especially if you're having a conversation with yourself, is make sure you're in a place where you can actually have that conversation with yourself. Meaning, you're not going to want to dig through this stuff if you're in the middle of a carnival or something like that. Well, maybe you do, but chances are you probably don't. And a couple things where, if you're talking with somebody else, then you're going to want to make sure that you can establish some sort of area of safety where you can actually have an honest conversation with people that garnishes some sort of form of mutual respect and mutual goals. So typically when people start to shy away from this sort of thing, it's because they start to feel disrespected. It's because you end up having a crossing purpose. They're not going to be nearly as open as you would like them to be. And you're not going to be open with yourself as much as you're not going to give yourself a chance to actually dig through the conversation that you're going to have. Now, if that does happen, make sure that you can get yourself on the same page with whoever you're talking to, or if it's with yourself and you're sort of wrestling inside of your own head, get to a place where you want to understand, reestablish what the goal is, and then just allow yourself permission to kind of get out of your own way, and you want to keep that conversation private to yourself. So a good place to be would be to just start with the facts. So start with what happened, and then ask yourself why not. And then understand that you need to kind of do your homework behind this kind of stuff. So the reason to start with the actual facts of what actually occurred is because it's the least emotional place to start a conversation with. You're not going to get caught up in the way that you feel about something, but you're going to look at what actually happened. Then you're going to want to share your story with yourself or with others, whoever you're talking to. Make sure you're not using absolutes. Instead of saying, you said, say, I thought that we agreed, or I thought that this is what I was supposed to do, rather than saying, displacing blame onto somebody else. You said I should do this. And then you're going to want to watch out for obstacles as well. So make sure you're not going to be able to trip over yourself while you're having these conversations. So and once you've worked your way through that, you want to ask yourself what happened and make this honest as possible. So why did you cheat on your diet, for example? So going back to the example where you had your fitness goals and then you lost track along the way because you went out with your friends on the weekend. Well, so what was the problem? Did you guys go out to a restaurant and have a great time? Fine. Did the restaurant not let you bring in your meal plan or there was nothing on the menu that followed your sort of macronutrient breakdown, or however you want to talk about it? And then really start to diagnose your response. There are plenty of times when I was bodybuilding where I thought, oh, well, I can't take a meal with me because I have no place to heat it. It turns out that Tim Hortons will actually let you use their microwave, so that was not the best excuse for myself. Now, once you've kind of worked through whether or not this is a motivational problem or an ability problem, which the case that I just described was, I guess would be an ability problem. And it was easy to solve. I was like, oh, well, look, Tim Hortons will let me use their microwave. Now I don't have a problem. You want to respond accordingly. So motivational problems, you may need to change your own view of something. So for example, dealing with your relationship with food can be very difficult. But something you don't want to do is start to kind of fake your way through it. Give yourself sort of a charismatic, powerful, or, the perks behind it all. Like if I eat this boiled chicken and steamed vegetables, I'm suddenly going to be that much leaner. They're not going to work very well, and they're definitely not long lasting. And you want to remind yourself of the natural consequences. So how important is that goal for you? And what are the consequences of you not achieving that goal? So if you are using this example, trying to lose 10 pounds, how are you going to feel at the end of this if you don't accomplish that goal? Was that meal worth it? These are the conversations you want to be having with yourself. And one thing you want to do while you're sort of reminding yourself of the consequences is you want to start to link. You want to link the results with your current existing values. So you want to look at the short-term benefits with the long-term pain, which is kind of what I was just talking about. It's better to focus on the long-term benefits of something. It's almost always better to focus on the long-term results rather than the quick fix. And then you're going to want to think your way through what they call hidden victims. So this describes the effects and actions is going to have on others or even yourself. So the hidden victims might be maybe you didn't realize that by skipping your warm-up for your workout, that was actually preventing you from getting injured later on in the future. And then you went out for a run and you hurt your foot, for example. Maybe that's what happened, but that would be a hidden victim of, say, skipping the warm-up. The other thing you may want to think about is looking at the problem from the other side. So especially if you're talking to somebody or talking with somebody, try to empathize with them, try to get in their shoes and look at the problem from their view. And then you want to connect it to existing rewards. So that's going to get into our reward system as well. And you want to identify the natural consequences. So you want to listen to the other person's view of the natural consequences. What are they afraid of? And how can we sort of come together to solve that issue? And as soon as you reach compliance, so especially with yourself, stop overthinking it. Absolutely, like right away, just stop. As soon as you agree to the outcome, that's the end of the conversation, like the end. Move on. Now, while you're going through this, what you're going to find is that you're going to try to make it easy for yourself. Sometimes people are going to pretend that the issue is in motivation when they really don't know why their lack of planning or their lack of skills have something more to do with it. I see this all the time with nutrition and workout plans. They think it's just about getting motivated. They think it's just about watching a video or whatever it might be and getting excited to work out, or they need to take their pre-workout or this or that. And that's not necessarily the case. So you really want to explore those 6 sources of influence that I talked about earlier. I'll pop that up real quick. So really explore your way through those things and avoid quick advice. Don't just settle for, oh, well, I wasn't motivated. Really dig deep and find a solution that's going to work for you. The other thing you're going to want to do, especially if you're speaking with others. Now, by the way, this is a really great skill to have if you're going in and asking for a raise, which I think just about every human being should do when we return to work. The value of your employment is at a premium right now because, quite frankly, there's going to be nobody else who has the experience in your position at your job that can restart their business. So there's definitely something to be said for understanding this sort of system in having conversations with people. So you want to involve the other person in the solution. Now, that can be a little bit tricky, but you want to treat this like, I like to use the analogy of Hansel and Gretel, because you want to just kind of give them the breadcrumbs that leads them down the path that you want them to get to. It's really easy. I mean, I've been doing strength and conditioning and personal training and that kind of stuff, God, for more than 2 decades now. I started in like 98. And it's really easy for me to just give you a solution. You know, I'm looking to lose 10 pounds, no problem. Eat less and exercise more. That's good advice on the surface, but that's not actually going to get you motivated to actually go through the process. So what I would rather do is involve you in the solution finding. So how do you think we should do that? What is your nutrition like? Tell me what you're eating week to week. Pick 3 days. Write down all the food that you eat and send those to me. What are your favorite foods? What do you like to enjoy? What sort of exercises do you like and not like? Is there an exercise you want to try? Right? By involving somebody into the process, you end up getting both of you working on the solution rather than somebody just sort of dictating to you. And then it's also going to help enable that person as well. If you're having that conversation with yourself, like you're disappointed with yourself, you really want to work your way through this. Maybe write it down on paper and kind of go through, what are the pros and cons? What should we be working on? What's the result here? Well, I was too busy doing yard work to get my workouts in or whatever it is. So how can I solve that problem? So when people are involved in the decision making, they're actually more likely to be motivated to implement that decision as well. And then you want to be able to kind of check both sides as well. So you want to be able to check off all the motivational problems and all of the ability issues as well. And by the way, getting on that point, those 6 sources of influence that I talked about, quite often it's not necessarily just one of those sources. Quite often it's a bit of a mixture, in which case you're going to need to prioritize what can be dealt with first and what might need a little bit more work. For example, if somebody's been punished with exercise since they were 5 years old, it's going to be pretty hard to suddenly change that, make that change over a weekend sort of thing. It's going to take a bit of time for them to actually enjoy exercise again. Once you've done that, once you've kind of worked your way through that, there's kind of an idea of priming the pump. So you want to explore the root causes. So this is where we're talking about digging deeper, like I mentioned. You want to take your best guess without being judgmental about it. So you want to kind of look within yourself and really figure out, why is it do I feel this way about nutrition? Why do I not like eating boiled chicken and steamed vegetables? It could be a really easy answer, like, well, it's pretty boring. Okay, no problem. Speak honestly to yourself. Make sure you're staying honest with yourself and not just sort of coming to quick explanations as to what's going on. Next thing you want to do is make a plan. So once you found the problem, make a plan to curb the behavior and decide what you're going to do or who will do what by when. So decide on, with the example I used earlier, I fell off the wagon over the weekend because I went and hung out with my friends. Okay, no problem. Here's what I'm going to change. I'm going to start on Monday by planning all of my meals throughout the week. I'm going to follow the plan that you suggested. And then I'm going to follow up, at the end of the week and make sure that I'm still on track. Now, as you're going through that and you're having these conversations, new problems are going to emerge. And you're going to want to make sure that your plan is flexible and not just a solid crystallized state. So it needs to have a bit of push and pull to it so that when things go sideways, whether it's a new problem or you start to get emotional about things, you want to be flexible enough to be able to deal with that new problem and leave kind of a bookmark where you're at and and then come back to what the original problem would be. So follow-ups, there's sort of 2 things that you can do. There's, make sure you're following up on your own. So you're checking if you're using MyFitnessPal, you're sort of checking in over the course of the week and looking at how many calories you've consumed over the week. Or there's sort of the check back. That's when you're looking at your trainer to be like, hey, hold me accountable to this. We've got this new dog. Well, I guess not that new now, but She's getting a little yappy right now. I don't know what's going on upstairs, but while you're going through this, you're going to kind of create these new sort of habits, and you want to create practices that are going to enable accountability to actually happen. So you want to create that bedrock of trust within yourself and within others, to set clear and firm expectations. And you want to end that by stating, if something comes up, I want to know about it as soon as possible. This is something that I go through with my clients all the time. For example, with that example of somebody falling off the wagon over the weekend because they went and hung out with their friends and they lost control of their nutrition. Let me know as soon as possible. At best, you tell me on Thursday, hey, I've got my friend's birthday party on Saturday or Friday. I'm probably going to be off my nutrition plan. No problem. We can fix that real easily. If you're not able to work ahead, maybe it was a sporadic engagement, and let me know on Monday or even Sunday. Send me a message and be like, hey, this is what happened. No problem. Here's how we're going to move forward. That's going to allow me to sort of get a hold of this right away and find a solution, rather than, at the end of the month when you're hoping to lose those 10 pounds and you only lost 2. And it's like, well, every weekend I was going out and hanging out with my friends. Well, man, why didn't you let me know about that? And 2, like on my end would be like, when I asked you about it, why didn't you tell me? In which case now we're having another conversation. So this is kind of a evolving thing that's going to be kind of reciprocated over and over again. The other thing, and the last thing I'll end on here, is actually when these things come up, don't ever accept the excuse that something came up. So with that example of somebody falling off the wagon, don't say, oh, well, something came up. That's a terrible way to deal with an emerging problem that's going to give you more problems in the future rather than dealing with it right away. So really kind of get into describing what the problem is and figuring out what we can do to actually solve that problem. All right. So I hope that helps you guys out. Now, like I said, on Friday, I would like to do another Q&A. So if you do have questions, let me pop up my email. You can send them there and I will follow up with you and go over any sort of topics or questions that you might have. We'll do that Friday mornings, so feel free. Other than that, I'm going to go get my workout done, and I hope you guys all have a great day. Thanks for watching.